If you like this video, make sure to visit our Vimeo page and follow us to get the latest update.
Good evening. Let's start the session. Can you hear me and see my screen? Please confirm me over the chat room, then we can start the session. Okay, thank you. So I got my server access, but for today I'll be using a different login. I still didn't got time to check my new login. So for me, I think it should be okay because I'm on a different server. Okay, so in the last session so far, we covered how to extract the data using the standard data sources as well as flat file. Okay, so in today's session, let's load the transactional data. Okay, so in today's session, we'll see, or let's do one thing. So let me create a query, a BEX query on top of the master data report, which we have on the master data object which we created. Then we'll see how these tables, the attribute table and the text tables, are connected with each other. Okay, so just try to complete the assignments. Now let me go to the T code RSA1. So this is the info area which we have used. So we have loaded so far the material master data and then customer master data, and here I have loaded the master data for attributes. Okay, so we have attribute text as well as the article ID, attributes and text is loaded. So quickly I'll show you how to create a BW query on top of this info object, and then we'll see how to load the transactional data, where do we store transactional data in BW, and how the link between the transactional data and the master data will happen. So if you're working on BW on HANA, okay, or the regular BW, okay, I mean the BW on RDBMS, so you still create a query using the query designer. So let me show you that. And in BW for HANA, so SAP has integrated the query designer on the Eclipse modeling tools, which will come about that. Okay, so right now let's talk about how this works in BW on RDBMS and BW on HANA. Okay, so the latest version BW for HANA, slightly you have a different UI to create the query. Now this is our info object, this article ID. So copy the technical name, just simply select it, Control C. Now go to Start, All Programs. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to create a BW BEX query on top of the master data we have loaded. So all programs, and then here you find something called Business Explorer. Okay, within the Business Explorer you have Analyzer. Okay, so first let's go to Analyzer. We'll talk about the other applications later. Go to Analyzer. So when you open Analyzer, you'll see when you open that tool, a Microsoft Excel will open, because BEX Analyzer is nothing but a VB macro embedded in Microsoft Excel. So this is the technical name of the info object which we are using. So here we have info object, and then on top of this we are creating a query. And this is just a query, it is not a report. So what is the difference between query and report? Query is something which is bringing the data in the required manner, bringing the required data, but the report is where you are doing a 100% formatting, you are organizing the data in the way user wants. Like for example, if you see the annual sales report or annual revenue report of any company, it comes in a proper format, right? You have a logo, the font colors, font, everything, in a properly organized manner. So that is the report. Query is just the raw data. So now you can see this is the tool. Okay, click on run. Now you see the Excel got open. Now go to the tab add-ins. Then here you have tools, create a new query. Okay, so give your credentials, the client, you can get the client number, right? So client ECC is 800, but we are connecting to BW, right? So I think the BW client is 001. Okay, so client 001, and then your user ID and password. Click on OK. So now the query designer will open. So this is the BW Bex query designer where you design your query. Now once the query designer opens, here there is an option to, right, where the mouse is pointing on. Now click on it. So it will ask you on which info provider you want to create the query. So it's like, if you want to create a query for you need a table, right? The same way here it's asking the system is asking us to select the info provider. So go to find, give the technical name of the query, and then search, enable this checkbox, search in technical name. Always do the search on the technical name. You might find multiple objects based on the same description, but you'll not find multiple objects on the same technical name, right? You can even enable here the technical name. So if you find multiple objects which are similar with the same technical name, you can see here. So this is a technical name, click on open. So now if I go to rows and columns, there are two tabs, filter and rows and columns. Go to rows and columns. Now go to attributes here. So number of records, just taking this key figure and keeping it here. And then article ID, I'm dropping it in the rows. So here I have something called product line. Okay, I'll drop it here. And then product category. Okay, now if you want to apply any filter, like you want to see only a few particular products, you can apply a query filter. So for now I will leave it like this. So we'll talk about the query designer in detail in the coming sessions, but now I want to quickly show you one feature. So in the product ID here, if you go to display, you have display as what you want to display as key and text. Okay, so let's say I want to show both key and text. So product ID, like every product has some unique ID. So like for example 52671, then there is an associated description, right? So that is the text. So now we have loaded the text data separately into the text table. Then we have loaded the attributes like the product ID, which product line it falls and which category it falls. So that is the attribute table. So now the data is coming from both of these tables. Let's see. Let me save this query. Click on the save button. We don't need to write any uh, SQL or any ABAP code. So that's the whole purpose of these reporting tools, right? So you design in the backend. You design the data flow, and it should be simple drag and drops to get the data in the required format. Now I'll say product master data report. So this is a description. Now save. So I have enabled key and text. Now run the query. So for now, this query runs in Excel. Like I said, if you want to see data in a proper formatted way, for that you have to create a report. So basically, you have BW reporting, as well as there are business objects reporting. So you can also use business objects for reporting. Give me 1 minute. Yeah, so here you can see this is a product ID and this is a product description. So this is a category and product line. So product line is still showing the key. So you need to load the product line description, the text in the backend to show what does F60 or F16 or F36 mean, right? And the same way here, this is the key. Let's say I want to apply a filter on this particular product column. I can always right click and then click on select filter value. So remember that the filtering of the data will always happen on this numerical ID. Okay, now the whole reason why we load ID and text separately is that, see, the system will perform a join between those two tables and give us, so we'll have the option to filter the data. Here in the filter criteria, we can't remember every product ID. Same way you can't remember, you can't filter the data based on the description, because the filtering on the alphanumerical values is very bad in performance. So we want both. So this is how the system will show you the data, the product ID and the product description. So now if I want to apply a filter, let's say I can select multiple single values. So the query is filtered. Okay, so that's why we always bring data from, we load the text separately and attribute separately. And the link between those two tables, the attribute table and the text table, what is the link? The info object is the link. So that's why instead of we directly creating the tables, we manage them through info objects. Okay. So your task should be, I'll give you a new file. You have to load the text data for product line, okay, and then rerun the same report, and now you should be even able to see the product line description. Okay, so for that you have to go to query settings. Now go to product line and then go to display. Here you have to enable both key and text. If I enable key and text now, the same key value will be showing 2 times because there is no text loaded. See the same, this is the key ID, product line ID. So now if I try to filter the data based on the product line, sorry, this is not the product line filter, sorry. This is still this is only the product line product ID filter. Okay, so this is the significance of loading the attribute data and text data separately into different tables. So quick question, so from how many tables is this data coming in the report. So to the data, what you see in the report is accessed from how many tables in the backend, and which are those tables? Quickly, can you answer me? Okay, so that's two tables. One is P table, and the next one is the text table. That's right. Okay. So others, do you follow? Any questions? Yeah, Ganesh, I have unmuted you. Do you have a question?
Sorry, Ganesh, actually, due to internet outage, I could not able to log in on time. Can you please briefly summarize what's so far what I have missed?
Okay, no problem, sure. So basically what I'm trying to do is in the last sessions we have loaded the master data, right? And then in today's session I'm trying to create a query, a BW BEX query. So and then when we run the report, basically the query brings data from the backend tables. I created a query on this info object, okay, that is product ID. So in the last session during the flat file load, we loaded master data and text, right? So this is the info object. Yeah. So this is the info object, and then Roland, I'm also answering your question at the same time. So this is the info object which we created, and basically it has created two tables. One is P table. What is the naming convention for the P table? /BAC/P and your info object name. So here, what did we load? We have loaded the attributes. What are the attributes we loaded? So here, the table, if you see here, you have product ID. Okay, product ID, and then you have product line, and then you have product category. So this is the data which we loaded into this table. Okay, then there is other table which got created with this info object, that is a text table. So the naming convention for the name of the table which would be created by the system is /BAC/T and your info object name. Okay, and what do we have in this table? So you have the product ID and the product description. So product ID and the product description or the text. So for example, one record, if you say so product ID, so 16623. Okay, so product line something F60. What is F60? You have to load the description of F60. Let's say that is accessories. Okay, so there is a which category product it falls under a particular category. Let's say belts, bags, and wallets. Okay, so there is a product category. Now, what does this product ID refers to? Let's say, for example, 16623 refers to a leather belt. Okay. So now if I create a query, a BW BEX query on top of this info object, okay. Now, like I said, in BW we don't deal with the tables. The system creates the tables, and the system loads data into these tables. We all deal with info objects and info providers. Info providers we didn't cover so far, so we deal completely with the info objects. Now, when I create a BEX query on top of this info object, basically the system will try to join these two tables, and then it brings the data. So for example, if I go here, now see article ID, category, product line, this is coming from the P table, the text from the text table. Okay, now what is the advantage of having the info object? See, now if I want to filter the data, if I right click and say click on filter value, I'll filter the data. Sorry, what happened? So when I filter the data, the filtering should always happen on the key. Okay, the filtering should always happen on the key, and for us it would be very tough to understand, remember the key. So that's why the description should be shown. So by loading the key and text, it will show us one single column. Let me remove the filter. Click on select filter value. Now I'm seeing the key and text. So although I select the text here and then pass it to on the right hand side, so I'm asking the system to filter the data on the key. No, the system will never filter the data on the text. So obviously the filtering would be faster if you do it on the key, not on the text. So that way it is very user friendly, and at the same time it's good in terms of performance. So that's how the info object connects the descriptions as well as the master data attributes. Fine. Is it clear, both of you, Roland and Ganesh?
Yeah, it's clear. Can you please ping me the URL of the PPT? Actually, I have lost the URL.
Oh, okay. Yes, Anas, I think you have to go through the sessions. Otherwise, the recordings. Otherwise, it would be very tough to understand what's going on. So that's fine. Just to go. No, feel free to ask me if you have any question. But I would seriously suggest you to first go through the recordings and then. Give me 1 minute. I'll give you the link for the PPT. Okay, so I have given the PPT link. Okay, so now let's load some transactional data. Okay, so far we just loaded the master data. Now let's load some transaction data. What is master data? What is transaction data? So data which doesn't change very frequently is your master data. So master data will be loaded to info object tables. So which are those tables? The attribute table, P table, and the text table. Now examples of master data, like for example, vendor master data, like vendor information. So what is a vendor country, vendor ID, vendor description, like what kind of vendor it is, like do we give any priority for that particular vendor? So that is the vendor master data. Similarly, like customer. So let's say for Gap, so Gap company, for example, Walmart. So Walmart is a very premium customer because they book orders in bulk and then very frequently. So that is a premium customer. Then what is the customer location? What are the various store locations Walmart has? What are in which countries there is a shipping location? So all that customer related data is master data again. Like employee ID. If I'm an employee, my details like my phone number or my address, my employee ID, then date of joining. So this data doesn't change every day, right? So for example, if you take a designation, that is master data. So I don't change my designation every day. If I'm a manager, I'll be manager for some time. It's not that today I'm a manager, tomorrow I'm a senior manager, and after tomorrow I'll be again associate manager. It will not change like that, right? So that kind of data is your master data. Now the day-to-day transactions which happens, they are your transactional data. For example, now your new customer is enrolling. You get the data of that customer, so that is your customer master data. Now that customer places a sales order. So in that sales order, the customer is requesting to send 10 different products of different sizes. of a particular quantity, requesting to deliver it on a particular day. So that is transactional data. Now, once the sales order gets created, the shipment, the sales order would be processed, and then the delivery happens, the shipment happens, and then the billing happens. All this is your not day-to-day transactions, right? So this is transactional data. Now, similarly, we make a purchase from a vendor. So we create a purchase order. Then we get the goods, and then we make the goods receipt. Okay, all that, those are your transactional data. Okay, so master data will be loaded to the info object tables. Now let's see, where do we load our transactional data. So for transactional data, we have something called as DSO, data store object. So we use this DSO to store the transactional data. I will first let's load this, and then we'll talk about what are the changes which happens in BW on HANA and BW for HANA, and how it works in regular BW. So all this we'll talk about it. But for now, to begin with, let's see how do we load the transactional data into a DSO. So DSO is nothing but a flat table. Okay, there are many other features of a DSO, but for simplicity's sake, I'll say just like a flat table. So in a table, what you have primary key, okay, and then you have the data fields, right? So same way, a DSO will have key fields, and those are nothing but info objects. So in BW, anything you want to create, info object is required. There is an exception about the BW on HANA and BW features we'll talk about slowly. But anything for now, you need to keep. So the DSO is to store the transactional data, not master data. So DSO used for storing transactional data. Now, first of all, before if you want to create DSO, info objects are required. Okay. So what I'll do, the way how I'll progress in the course is, I will start with I'll start with the scenarios or the concepts which are valid for all the systems like BW on HANA, BW for HANA, etc. Then slowly, once we get into the system, then we'll talk about, okay, how things change in BW for HANA, and how it used to be in regular BW. So that's the way how I take the course. Okay. So if you have something question on the BW for HANA, why we are still using this, etc. So we'll be covering all that in the coming sessions. So first of all, info objects has to be required to create a DSO. Then so it will have key fields and data fields. So anything you add, all the info objects which you add to the key fields will become the primary key of the DSO, and the other fields will be your data fields. So the property of the DSO is to overwrite. It overwrites the data based on key. Okay, meaning when you load two records with the same key, the latest record will overwrite the previous record. Okay, so the key figures. So when I say key, this is primary key. Okay, the exception is on the key figures. So key figures you can set up whether it should be whether the key figure should be overwrite. You should be in the override mode or in the summation mode. So that you can enable the setting, but characteristics will be always overwritten in a DSO. Okay, so these are the properties of the DSO. Now let me show you what data I want to load, and what info objects are required, and then we'll create a DSO, and we'll talk about how do we load the transactional data. So let me open a file. So basically, I'll show you loading from a flat file. So I'll upload. I'll upload this particular file in the blog. Okay, wherever the recordings are there, I'll upload there. Now this is the data which I want to load into the DSO. Okay, now if you see, these are your the sales transactions. Now, for example, I don't have a transaction ID. I can add that particular column if required. So this is the date on which that particular transaction is happening, or let's say, let me add a transaction ID. Insert. So far now, I'm just giving some unique number for every record. So we'll talk about, we'll load the proper SAP data, and then I'll give you some more scenarios. So this is the transaction ID. Now the date on which this particular transaction happened. So there is a sales order created on this particular date for this particular product. Okay. So then in this store, basically in this store, this transaction has happened. Let's take this. This is POS data. So you go to a store and then are doing some purchase. Now this is the total. We have purchased one product. So this is the revenue. Then this is the discount offered. So this is the total gross margin the company got on this particular transaction. Likewise, there's a lot of data. Now, if I want to load this data, I need info object. So all of this should be all of this for all of this I should have an info object. So product ID, category, product line, we already created info objects during the master data load. So you have to reuse the same info object. So that's how you can link the master data tables with the transactional tables. Now the next thing what I'll do is for this I have a standard info object date. So I can use a system the standard SAP objects. Now store ID, city and state, I'll check in the system if there are already objects created by others. I can make use of the same objects. And then same thing, revenue, quantity sold, margin and discount. So let me first get the info objects. So whenever we work in the project, what we have to do is don't create duplicate objects. You should always search for if the same objects are created by anyone in the project. Say, let's say we want to load the sales data, and in the sales data you have product. The same product info object would have been created even for the other scenarios like purchasing. Then we have to reuse the same info object. We should never create new info objects. So now the question is like, does this have master data and transaction data? Now, for example, so product number. See, this is your transactional data. In the transaction also you have product, but the product line and category, this is master data. Okay. Now similarly, store. So this is transactional data. Now this is your master data again. Okay.
I have a question over here. How can I reuse the same thing if it is for a different purpose?
Can you elaborate?
Since you say that it is for sales and purchase, as you in this case, both
Right.
are for the different purpose. How I can
Right.
reuse?
So basically what I mean is the info object will be same. When you use the info object in the respective DSO, okay, you are actually creating two separate tables, but you are reusing the info object. Info object
Okay.
is more like a field, okay. You can use the same field in multiple tables, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'll always create a separate DSO both for sales data as well as even uh, for the purchasing data. Okay, but in those DSOs, the info objects might be common.
Okay. Okay.
So now let me just try to check what all info objects are there in the system. So the question is why the store ID is transactional data. Like you go to today. Let's say there are 5 stores. In your city there are 5 stores. Just take any store. Okay, let's say a Levi's outlet. There are 5 outlets. Today you go to one store and you're making a purchase. There are some other customers there who are going to other stores, right? So that is a part of the transaction, the sales data. Got it? So that is transaction data. But now if you talk about the store location, the location doesn't change. Okay, so that is your master data. Now let me try to get the info objects quickly. I'll go to the system. Now this is my article ID info object. So this SKU number is nothing but article ID. Then if I go to attributes, I have the product line and category. Then let me see if there are any other objects which has a state and store. So I can search the system based on the description. So let me go to info objects. So there is an info object called state. Let's see what is the technical name and length. Before you use the info object, make sure the data type and length are usable. So it is says char 20. So do we have the data in that particular format? So if we go to here, so state char 20, yes, that I can use it. And similarly, let me look for the city info object. So this info object is ZBW underscore state. So for any date, you can use a standard info object 0 cal day. Okay. So there is a standard SAP object starting with 0 cal day. Now let me check for city. So this again, I have another info object BW underscore city, that is also cat20. Okay, then I want the store ID. If I go to info provider, I mean, if you want to create, you can create yourself for the training scenario. But while you work in the project, always try to look for the info objects. Don't keep on creating your objects. Okay. So here I just want to save time, so I'm using the existing info objects, and that's a best practice as well. Then here I have the shop ID. Then revenue, quantity, etc. So I want the key figures. Okay, so let me see if I have an info object for discount. Otherwise, I'll just simply create one or ignore that for time being. So discount. That is due date. If you see the description, that is amount eligible for cash discount, but I want a, yeah, I can use this info object. It's a standard info object, cash discount amount. Okay, now let's create a DSO with these fields. Now here, tell me what should be the primary key of the DSO? The primary key of the DSO will be the transaction ID. That is a unique ID, right? For every transaction, there is a unique ID which would be created. So this transaction ID will be, I'll create a, I'll do it as a part of the primary key. So let me create a DSO. So creating DSO is very simple. Like I said, if you reuse the info objects, it doesn't matter. I mean, you are always creating separate tables. These info objects are just used like a reference, and it will, based on the info object settings, it will create the separate tables. So now, if you want, we can create a separate info area. Right click on create info area. I'll say Z e-fashion. E-fashion sales flow. Now right click on this and then say create a DSO data store object. Z, let's say EF underscore sales e-fashion sales. So e-fashion is nothing but basically kind of, you can think that they're kind of in chain of stores, in the in the fashion industry. So in the clothing and accessories. So in the key fields, so now I'll add the transaction ID as a key. So for that, let me go to the other Excel and then take the info objects. Go to key fields, right click, and then info object direct input. Give the info object name, refresh, and then enter. Okay. Then add your data fields. So all these data fields, let's say okay, so I'll collect all these info objects and then I'll add it in the data fields, because whatever you add in the key fields will become the primary key. Go to data fields, right click, and then info object direct input. Okay, press paste the info objects, press refresh. I also want to add some other info objects, like for example cal month. So now you have the day, okay, the transaction date, that is the calendar date, but I want to see in my report how much is the sales by month, how much is the sales by year. So for that we require these time objects, year and month. Okay, so those info objects I'm also adding, cal month and cal year. Now if you want, you can move these objects. You can keep all the key figures on the bottom, but it's not really, it doesn't impact anything. So you can do a drag and drop to move your objects. The frequently used objects for the query should be on the top. That would be better. It doesn't impact much. So take all the default options. Okay. So now let's say if I use this info object product line in 10 DSOs, in all those 10 DSOs, a field would be created with char 3. Okay. So you are still creating 10 separate tables. It's just like a field which you are reusing. Now activate the DSO. Okay, so the DSO is activated. Now go back. So this is how the DSO look like. DSO stands for data store object. Okay, this is the icon for DSO. So creating the transformations and loading the data is as usual. There is no change. Now let's load the data and then we'll create a report on top of that, and then we'll understand how do you connect your master data with the transactional data. Okay. So to load the data, what is the process? First of all, create a data source now, because now I want to load the data from the flat file. I'll create a data source on the file. So if I'm extracting the data from SAP system, then I'll create a data source in ECC, right? So go to source systems. Or select your source system file load, the first one. Yeah, you can select anything. Now first of all, I will get that particular file. So I already have that file here. So you just need to copy and paste that particular file in the remote desktop on which you are working. So right click and say click on create data source. So give the data source technical name. Let's say ZEF underscore sales. What kind of data source is this? Now this is transactional data. Okay, transaction data. Click on continue. Give some description for your data source. So you can say sales data source. Then go to the extraction tab. Give path of the file from which you would like to extract the data. So I'll upload this file in the training blog. You can download, and then you have to you can Control C and Control V, copy and paste in the remote desktop. Okay, so this is a remote desktop. This is a different server which I'm using, so you'll not find the same file there. So here I have eFashion Cube 1. Header rows to be ignored. The number of rows, the first row in the file is column headings, right? That is not the data. So this one. Okay, so number of rows to be ignored will be 1. Then the type of the format is separated with a separator. So data separator is comma. Okay, CSV file, comma separate value. Go to the proposal tab. Click on load example data. So we already saw how do we create this data source, right? The same process, nothing changed, whether it's transactional data or master data. The creation of the data source doesn't change. So click on load example data. What it will do, it will read some sample 10,000 records, and it will try to automatically create the structure of your data source. You should always check if that particular structure is correct or not. If not, you need to change it. Go to fields. So this product number is showing as length 5. So we already know it is length 6. So I'll change this to integer 4. The length I'll keep it as 6. Then quickly you check the other fields. Everything else seems to be okay. Now the revenue should be, I think, it's not an integer, but it should be a decimal. So you can give the decimal number of decimals as 2. Same thing here. Okay, so change the required data types and length, and now activate the data source. Now go to preview. So read preview of the data. Make sure the data is coming through this data source. Have a quick look how the fields are showing up. Okay, so I have to use a different file because I have added one more column, right? So let me do one thing. Let me edit the same file. I have added the key. Okay, I will add a new column.
This is five. There's five things you put it like this. Yes. That's cool. No, it's just how I use. Here, Baba. I'll keep this here. No. Fine. I'm not playing your game. You only get that if you win it. You have to.
So now I have added that particular file. So let me edit the data source once quickly. So go back to the data source. I'll go to the extraction tab. So go to change mode. So I have something called e-fashion now. Proposal tab. Load example data. Allow access to the file. Let me activate this data source.
You don't want it? You don't want it? I'm playing.
So now the data source is created. Let me quickly go back and modify the data source. So this is the one which we just created, right? So let me refresh /n RSA1. So go to the data source change mode. I'll go back to the fields. So I have to change this particular data type for the product. Let me keep it as integer 4. Then I'll keep this as 6. Okay, now go to preview and let's see the data. So now you can see we are seeing the data. So make sure that nothing is getting truncated, etc. So now let's load the data into the DSO. Okay, so this is our data source ZEF_sales. Now go to info provider. Okay. Select the DSO, right click and then say create transformation. And then the source of the transformation is data source. This is what we are creating now is data store that stores the data. This is data source, which is the source of the data. Okay, give the data source name and then the source system. The source system is file here. go on continue. Now do the mappings. So transaction ID, yeah. Then the product number, SKU number is nothing but your product number. So I'm mapping product line, sorry, category, product line, the state, city, the store ID. Now for the cal month and cal year, the system will automatically derive from the date. So just map the date to cal month and cal year. The system will automatically convert into month and year. Okay. Then quantity sold. So do the mapping. Revenue. So revenue is nothing but here. We didn't add the revenue. Okay, amount sold is missing. Okay, let me do the mapping later. So margin. Then discount. Okay, so currency I'll keep a constant value. So because ideally the currency should be, so revenue is coming, revenue, margin and amount, in which currency is that coming? So this is just a flat file load. So now assuming that all the data coming from the source is in USD. Okay, so I'll keep a constant value, but ideally there should be a currency column coming from the source as well. So go to rule details. Constant USD. I want to go to the next rule. So here I have the option. For the unit also, I'll keep a constant. Let's say EHS, EA. Transfer values. Now activate the transformation. So now I want to add one more info object, that is amount sold to the DSO. And then again, I will activate the DSO and again the transformation. So why is this missing? So now if I go to the DSO change mode, it should be in the data fields. So right click and then go to info object direct input, give the info object name, refresh, and then continue. Okay, so it says only permitted info object. So it looks like there is some problem with that particular, the way how that info object is created. Let me see what is the problem with that info object. Okay. So here basically there is something called a reference. So that's why the system is not allowing to add both the objects. So I'll talk about that. So what I'll do is I'll quickly create a copy of this. Right click on create info object. So let's see, the system also shows you some suggestions whenever you are trying to create info objects, that hey, there is already a similar info object, do you want to use that? So I can use this. So now I added this particular info object. Now let me activate the DSO. So whenever you modify a particular target or the source, the transformation will become inactive. So you have to go back to the transformation and activate it. Okay. Now in our case, we have to activate it once again because the mapping is missing, right? So now I'll go back to the transformation. So you can see if the transformation is showing in gray color, that means it is inactive. So go to change mode. So it is active version, not executable. Now here we have amount. So I'll map the revenue, sales revenue here. Okay. Now activate this particular transformation. So now that we have created transformation, the next step is creating info package and load DTP, right? So the same process, nothing new. So let's quickly go ahead and create an info package and DTP. So go to the data source, right click, and then create info package. So make sure the file is closed before you start the data load, otherwise the load will fail. Now info package, I'm going to the schedule tab. So grant access to the file and then now run. Okay, so it says data was requested. Now you can go to the monitor tab. So you can see the load got failed. Let me see why the load got failed. So I think again because of the data type and length which we have specified. You can go to the exact error. So if you see this one, you can right click and then go to display messages. So for revenue, basically, it's we didn't change the data type and length, so that's why it's throwing an error. So we have some decimal places and it's going beyond the 6 digits. So let's quickly change that. Go back to data source, change mode, fields tab. So this is kept as integer too, right? So that's why it's throwing an error. Now I'll keep this as I can use this decimal. Okay, so let's say 6 digit with 2 decimals. Quantity is integer. So this one discount also can be. Okay, now you have to activate this particular data source. So the data source is activated. Now go back. Now let me do a extraction once again. So go to the info package and start the extraction. Let me just rerun the info package. So whenever it comes to flat file, when you modify the data source, always refresh and then start the load again. So now that we changed the data source, even the transformation got inactive. So before we execute the DTP, let's activate the transformation as well. So now I have started the info package load. So it throws a different error. Let's see what is this. So again it says SQL message numeric overflow. It says the precision of the decimal value is larger than the target precision. Okay. So the problem is with the data source itself. So decimal and then floating point number, right? So yeah. So let's complete this load and then we'll take a break, okay? So we'll go to okay. So that's fine. So let me just take some 10 minutes break, and then I'll update the data type. So something to do with the data type, and then the kind of data what we have. So what I did is basically I increased the length from 6 to 8, sorry, 6 to 10. Let me see if this works. So the problem is with those key figures, revenue, etc., where we have, I think, the more than 6 digits coming. I think that's where we are. I was just changing it to different data type, but the length I never increased. So let's see. Just now I increased the length to 10. Let's see if this works. So it says data is requested. Now let's go to the monitor tab. Still there is an error. Let's see. So now let's go to details tab. So now this is on the transaction ID. Okay, this is going beyond. Let's see what is the problem here. Okay. So again, this is going beyond 6 characteristics. Let's see the data. Now let me go to the file quickly. So the file looks fine. Let me just change the length of that particular field as well. So the revenue, that seems to be okay. The key figure changes. Now all I have to do is change the field length for the product ID or the transaction ID. So this is integer 2. Let me again change this to integer 4. So for the key figures, I changed the total length to 10 and 4. and then okay, now let's extract it again. Okay, so the load is processing. So it says data was requested. Now go to monitor. Now finally the load is successful. Okay, so out of 46,021 records, all the 46,021 records are loaded. So the transformation will come in now after the PSA. Okay, so now we have to activate the transformation and then run the DTP. Okay, so I go to change mode and then activate the transformation. So the mistake I was trying to do is I'm just trying to change the data type and never trying to change the length of the field. So that's where there was an error. So basically, like, you know, if you have a 6-digit, now 6-digit with a 6-digit value, let's say 60,000, and then you have a decimal, okay, and then you have the corresponding decimals, right? So even the decimal, the length has to be accommodated. So that's where it was throwing an error for me. So I changed this length to 10 and then it worked, and similarly for the transaction ID I changed the length. So now I have activated the transformation. Now the data is there in the PSA. Now let's load it to the target. So for that I'll create a DTP. So go to the DTP. Now although we executed the info package many times so far, only one request is in the success status, meaning green. So I go to that PSA, select your data source, right click and then click on manage. So now you can notice only one request is in the failed successful state, and all of them are either in yellow or in red. So the system will not look for any such request. It will only look for the request, this one. Now let's execute the DTP. The DTP is going to fail anyways now once again. So can you tell me why the DTP will fail? So unless we have configured the lowercase option, the DTP will fail. So basically here you have your data on the category in the lowercase, okay? Unless we configure the lowercase option, the load will fail. So now here we have these records loaded. Go to the target. Give me yeah, okay. So now this request is successful. Now let's activate this particular request. So on the DSO, once we load the data, the next step what we have to do is we have to activate the request. We have loaded this data. Now in the DSO, when we load the data, so basically when we create the DSO, it will create 3 tables. Now let me go to the architecture of DSO. So the first table would be new table, and then the next one is active table, and the next one is change log. Okay, so this is DSO. The three tables in combined, we call this as a DSO. Now the reporting will happen on top of this active table. So whenever we load the data, data gets loaded into the active table, new table. So the new data which is getting loaded into the DSO, that is coming into the new table. Then the reporting is actually happening on the active table. So for the data to be available for the reporting on top of the DSO, we have to move the data from new table to active table, and so that process called as activation. So during this process, what is activation? During this process, data moves from the new table to the active table and the change log. So why we can't directly do reporting on top of the new table, etc., I'll explain. Okay, so for now, before you run the report on top of the DSO, what we have to do is we have to run a process called activation. Okay, so we have to run the activation process. Then only the data will move from new table to the active table, then it is available for reporting. So change log is to extract data to other data targets. If I want to load data from this DSO to some other tables, some other DSOs, etc., then the change log will come into picture. So this is some little bit tricky concept which I will explain in the tomorrow session about the change log. So for now, the data is there in the new table. Now let's start the activation process. So during the activation process, the system will also check the data quality. So to activate the data, select the request here. So how did we even come to this screen? Now once you execute the DTP, okay, you can go to the Manage tab of your DSO. Now select your request and then click on Activate button. So select your request and then click on Start. Now start refresh. Okay, now the activation is completed successfully. It's green. Now if I go to the Contents tab, here we have new table, active table, and change log. These are the three tables which I just spoke about. Now the data will be in the active table. Once the data is activated, the new table will become empty. Now you have the data in the active table and change log. So go to active table, see the number of entries. So there are the 46,021 records available in the active table. You can preview. Okay. So here we have the data. You have the product ID, product category, product line, state, city, the shop ID, calendar, month, and year. So you can see from the date, system has automatically extracted year and month. Okay, and then the quantity, discount, and where is amount sold? Here we also have the amount sold. Okay, so here the comma represent decimal. Okay, the way I don't know why it is designed that way, but the comma represents it's a decimal. So this is 79. Okay, it's not 7900. So it's a 199, and the decimal actually refers to the 1000. So now let me create a BEX query on top of this particular DSO. So once you open the query designer, now go to tools, create new query, click on create, go to find, give the DSO name, so go to info provider, so the DSO name is ZEF_SLS, go to find, give the DSO technical name and then click on find. Now click on open. Now go to rows and columns. Now I want to see what is the total revenue, okay, total amount sold by product line, okay. So where do I have product line? So this checkbox should never be applied, okay. So if you do that, then that will not be available for reporting, okay. So basically someone has used that, I'm reusing the existing info objects, so that's why there is a problem. So what I'll do is, let me just show you the data by calendar year. Now I'll show the key figure. This is the amount sold and then the quantity sold, and I also want to see the data by month, calendar month, or I can use this calendar month in the columns, or I can do the vice versa. Here I can move save the query. Your DSO name underscore Q01 sales query. Okay, so basically now this is not supposed to be done. Let me bring the year into rows. Okay, so let me bring the year object into rows. So let me drill down by year. So this is the revenue and quantity sold by year. Now if I want to see the monthly data, I can even drill down by calendar year month. So just simply double click on the year month, you can see. So this is year and then this is the month. And here we have the subtotal. So tomorrow I'll edit those in object properties. I'll show you in the session what properties I have to change. So as I reuse that info objects which are already created by others, now we are not seeing those objects like product line, state, city, etc. in the query. Okay. So what I would request you to do is create the same DSO for now. Okay. and load the data from the file. So tomorrow I'll explain you how the query will access the transaction data from the DSO, attributes from the attribute table, and the text from the text table. Okay. Any questions for today? Okay. Yeah. So let's meet tomorrow, and then we'll complete this particular data flow. Yeah. Thanks everyone.
Thank you for attending the session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to visit our Vimeo page and follow for more upcoming videos.